Hollywood in the 1970s didn't just revisit World War II. It tore it apart, rebuilt it, and gave us movies that were as messy, daring, and unpredictable as the decade itself. These weren't polished patriotic parades. They were gritty, strange, and sometimes just plain audacious. But here's the kicker. Some of them became cult classics. Others won Oscars. And a few nearly destroyed the careers of the people who made them. So, which ones made the cut? Let's dive in and see which films still stand tall. Force 10 from Navarone, 1978. Following up a stone-cold classic is never easy, and Force 10 from Navarone proves just how tough that can be. It tried to capture the spark of the guns of Navarone, but ended up more as a curious relic than a roaring triumph. The original boasted Gregory Peck, David Niven, and Anthony Quinn, three titans delivering one of the best war adventures of the 1960s. The sequel, a whole new lineup. Robert Shaw steps in as the leader. Edward Fox fills Niven's shoes, and a young Harrison Ford, fresh off Star Wars fame, jumps in as the action recruit. The film even opens by recycling footage from the original, almost whispering to audiences, "Remember how great that one was?" From there, it launches into a straightforward mission plot. Sabotage a dam to destroy a German bridge. Explosions, betrayals, and tense standoffs tick every war movie box. And while the script never climbs to the heights of the first film, it does offer standout moments. The dam explosion sequence remains a highlight of practical 70s effects, and Robert Shaw, in one of his final performances, adds gravitas to a story that otherwise feels thin. Critics weren't impressed. Roger Ebert famously dismissed it as a sleepwalk for director Guy Hamilton, better known for his slick James Bond outings. Audiences weren't kinder, with many feeling the movie lacked the heart and intensity of its predecessor. Yet time has given Force 10 a modest redemption. For fans of classic adventure, or for those curious to see Harrison Ford awkwardly bridging the gap between space hero and grounded soldier, it's an oddly satisfying watch. Not iconic, not groundbreaking, but gritty enough to earn its place as a late 70s war film that deserves a nod on this list. MacArthur, 1977. Gregory Peck stepping into the shoes of General Douglas MacArthur. Sounds like Hollywood gold, right? And in terms of performance, Peck delivers. He's commanding, sharp, and even landed a Golden Globe nomination. But the film itself, that's where things get tricky. Directed by Joseph Sargent, the story charts MacArthur's career from World War II through the Korean War, ending with his fiery clash with President Truman. On paper, it's sweeping. On screen, it feels a little too safe. What's fascinating is the history behind the casting. John Wayne turned it down, claiming it was too close to roles he'd already played. George C. Scott passed as well, not wanting to repeat his Patton performance. That left Peck, who threw himself into it wholeheartedly. Even when the script played cautious, Peck gave MacArthur a proud, defiant edge that still resonates. Critics, though, weren't blown away. They felt it pulled punches and avoided digging into the darker complexities of MacArthur's personality. Peck himself later admitted the film didn't rise to its full potential, but he also said it was one of his favorite roles. That's telling. You can see how much respect he had for the character. What the movie does offer is a visual showcase. Military parades, battle maps, and the general's signature pipe all get their due. It may not hit the epic highs of Patton, but it works as a respectful, watchable portrait. If you're curious about the man behind the legend, and you're willing to forgive a script that plays it safe, this one still has a place on the list. Jakob the Liar, 1975. Now here's a hidden gem most casual war film fans never stumble across. Jakob the Liar was made in East Germany and became the only East German film ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. That alone makes it unique. But the story it tells is even more remarkable. Set in a Jewish ghetto in Nazi-occupied Poland, The film follows Jakob Haim, played with gentle subtlety, as he stumbles upon news that the Russians are advancing. Radios were forbidden, but Jacob spreads the word by pretending he owns one. At first, it's a simple lie to lift spirits. But soon, the lie becomes the only thread holding people together. Hope is dangerous, but it's also essential. The movie takes a delicate approach. Instead of swelling music and melodrama, it leans into quiet, understated performances. German critics at the time praised its softness without sentimentality, a rare balance in a war film. For audiences behind the Iron Curtain, it was a bittersweet reminder of both survival and silence. In the West, though, it struggled. Because it was an East German production during the Cold War, it barely saw screens in America. Only tiny art house theaters gave it a run, and even then, years after its release. It wasn't banned for its content. It was effectively blocked for its origin. Today, Jakob the Liar stands as a thoughtful counterpoint to the more explosive, action-heavy war films of the 70s. It's about the power of stories themselves, about how even the smallest untruth can keep despair at bay. Subtle, haunting, and unforgettable. The McKenzie Break, 1970. Most World War II movies show Allied prisoners plotting escapes from German camps. The McKenzie Break flips the script. Here, it's German prisoners in Scotland plotting their breakout, and the Allied officers scrambling to stop them. That twist alone gives it an edge. Brian Keith leads as an Irish officer assigned to sniff out what the prisoners are planning. He quickly realizes he's up against more than homesick soldiers. These are hardened strategists, led by a cunning U-boat commander. What unfolds isn't just a war film. It's a psychological duel, with Keith and his counterpart locked in a chess game where every move matters. Director Lamont Johnson keeps things grounded and tense. You don't get endless firefights here. Instead, the suspense builds in quiet moments, in whispers and glances exchanged through barbed wire. That restraint makes the payoffs hit harder when the tension finally snaps. The movie didn't get the fanfare of other war epics, but it has quietly aged into a smart, underrated thriller. For audiences burned out on endless explosions, the McKenzie Break offers something sharper. It's less about brute force and more about intellect, patience, and manipulation. If you want a World War II movie that keeps you leaning forward, trying to second-guess what the prisoners are plotting, this one deserves a spot on your list. It's often overlooked, but once you've seen it, you won't forget the duel of wits at its core. Too Late, The Hero, 1970. Robert Aldrich, the man behind The Dirty Dozen, never made half-hearted war movies, and Too Late, The Hero shows exactly why. At first glance, it looks like another ensemble mission picture. A ragtag British unit, joined by an American translator played by Cliff Robertson, is ordered to knock out a Japanese communication station. Standard setup, right? But halfway through, the movie takes a hard left turn and becomes something entirely different. Instead of the expected mission accomplished march, what follows is essentially one long punishing chase across a remote Pacific island. The soldiers are stripped of their glory. Their numbers dwindle, and victory becomes a distant dream. What's left is sheer survival. Michael Caine, playing the sardonic officer, delivers his trademark dry wit while wrestling with the futility of their situation. Robertson plays the reluctant hero with grit, while Denholm Elliott gives the film extra weight in a sharp supporting role. What makes Too Late, The Hero stand out is its tone. Aldrich refuses to romanticize. There are no sweeping speeches or polished heroics. The mud, the exhaustion, the despair, they hit harder than most war films of the decade. By the second half, you feel the weight pressing down on the men just as much as they do. Critics at the time were divided. Some found it too bleak. Others admired its raw honesty. That honesty is exactly what makes it powerful today. Too Late, The Hero is not a flag-waving war story. It's a brutal study of what happens when victory slips away and survival is the only goal left. It doesn't leave you cheering, but it leaves you thinking. For anyone tired of glossy war spectacles, this one lands like a gut punch. Catch-22, 1970. How do you film a novel that critics once labeled unfilmable? That was the challenge director Mike Nichols faced when he adapted Joseph Heller's Catch-22, one of the most influential satirical novels of the 20th century. The result is a strange, messy, yet hypnotic satire that still divides audiences decades later. Alan Arkin anchors the film as Yossarian, a bombardier desperate to escape flying dangerous missions. His problem? The infamous catch. If he claims he's insane, he's considered sane for wanting to survive, which means he has to keep flying. It's a vicious loop with no escape. What makes the film so fascinating is its shifting tone. One moment it's absurd comedy, with soldiers bumbling through nonsensical orders, and the next it plunges into sharp tragedy. Nichols and screenwriter Buck Henry embraced that chaos, capturing the novel's bizarre rhythm. The cast is stacked. Orson Welles looms as a blustering general. Martin Sheen and Jon Voight bring youthful energy. Anthony Perkins adds nervous charm. And even Bob Newhart shows up, all playing characters that feel like they've been pulled from different universes. That unevenness isn't a flaw. It's the point. War here is illogical, surreal, and maddening. Visually, the movie makes the most of its desert landscapes, staging striking airfield scenes and tense flight sequences. But what lingers isn't the spectacle. It's the mood. Disjointed, unpredictable, and oddly magnetic, it mirrors the chaos of Heller's book. When it premiered, critics were split. Some called it brilliant. Others dismissed it as incoherent. Yet over time, it has gained respect as one of the boldest attempts to translate absurdist literature into cinema. Catch-22 isn't for everyone, but that's exactly why it matters. It doesn't offer easy answers, only contradictions and paradoxes. Just like war itself. Kelly's Heroes, 1970. What happens when you mix Clint Eastwood with a groovy heist movie set in World War II? You get Kelly's Heroes, a bizarre mashup that somehow works better than it has any right to. Eastwood plays Kelly, a no-nonsense soldier who discovers a stash of Nazi gold hidden behind enemy lines. Instead of liberating towns or holding the line, his squad decides to sneak off and steal it. Yeah, this is less Saving Private Ryan and more Ocean's 11, just with tanks. The supporting cast steals the show. Telly Savalas brings grit and swagger, but it's Donald Sutherland who turns heads as Oddball, a laid-back, tank-driving hippie who looks and sounds like he wandered in from a different decade. His spaced-out optimism and catchphrases became cult favorites, giving the movie a surreal comic streak. Behind the scenes, though, not everyone was thrilled. Eastwood later admitted he was disappointed with MGM's decision to cut out several key scenes, including moments that gave more depth to the characters. What could have been a sharper critique of military absurdity turned into more of a quirky action comedy. Even so, Kelly's Heroes has endured. It's lighthearted, cheeky, and packed with style. It doesn't try to teach you history, but it does entertain in ways most World War II films never dared. It's less about patriotism and more about profit. And maybe that's exactly why audiences loved it. Midway, 1976. Big, star-studded, and unapologetically old school, Midway is the kind of war movie you'd expect your grandfather to love, and for good reason. It's a serious retelling of the Battle of Midway, the turning point in the Pacific. No shaky cameras, no CGI fireballs, just model ships, practical explosions, and a who's who of Hollywood's heavyweights. Charlton Heston, Henry Fonda, James Coburn, Glenn Ford, and Robert Mitchum headline, while Japanese cinema icons like Toshiro Mifune lend credibility to the other side. The movie works hard to get the details right. From the ships to the strategy maps, it's a history buff's dream. It takes time to show what the commanders were thinking, both American and Japanese, instead of just focusing on dogfights. That said, it slows down in spots, weighed down by side plots and a clunky, romantic subplot that feels wedged in to appeal to wider audiences. But when Midway gets back to the action, it shines. The battle sequences are meticulously staged, showing the chaos of naval warfare without turning into a blur. Critics today still point out how much more authentic it feels compared to Roland Emmerich's 2019 version, which leaned too heavily on digital effects. Midway may not be perfect, but for anyone curious about how the Pacific Campaign really unfolded, it delivers. It's respectful, detailed, and solidly made. A film that earns its place in the 1970s war canon. The Eagle Has Landed, 1976. A World War II thriller where the main characters are Nazis. That was the gamble behind The Eagle Has Landed. And against the odds, it actually works. The story follows a German commando unit sent on a daring mission to England. Kidnap Winston Churchill. Michael Caine and Robert Duvall lead the cast as German officers, and while their accents don't always convince, their sheer presence makes the film compelling. The first half moves deliberately, carefully setting up the elaborate plan. John Sturges, the veteran director behind The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven, builds the suspense brick by brick. By the time the mission is in motion, the film shifts gears and the tension spikes. The final act delivers classic Sturges action, tight staging, explosive confrontations, and sequences that keep you leaning forward. But here's the twist. Behind the scenes, the production wasn't quite as inspiring. Michael Caine later revealed in his autobiography that Sturges admitted he only took the project to finance his fishing trips. Once filming wrapped, Sturges retired and vanished from Hollywood. That revelation colored the movie's legacy, making fans wonder what it could have been with a more passionate director at the helm. Even with that baggage, The Eagle Has Landed has aged into a solid, highly watchable thriller. It's unusual for a war film of the 1970s to place the enemy front and center, yet it manages to walk a fine line. The German soldiers aren't glorified, but they aren't caricatures either. That balance gives the film a unique edge, setting it apart from more traditional narratives. Not flawless, but smartly crafted and filled with tension, it remains one of the decade's most intriguing war thrillers, and a reminder that sometimes even risky premises can land. Tora, 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 1970. If you want accuracy, Tora, Tora, Tora is the one to watch. This joint American-Japanese production doesn't just dramatize Pearl Harbor, it reconstructs it from both perspectives with painstaking attention to detail. Richard Fleischer directed the American side, while Toshio Masuda and Kinji Fukasaku handled the Japanese sequences. That dual approach gives the film a split personality that works brilliantly, blending two visions into a balanced, almost documentary-style look at one of the most pivotal moments of World War II. What really sets it apart are the visuals. Long before CGI, the film relied on miniature ships, massive practical explosions, and daring aerial photography. Watching planes dive over the harbor, smoke filling the sky, you can still feel the intensity today. The Academy thought so too, awarding it the Oscar for Best Visual Effects, a recognition it fully earned. But the spectacle isn't the heart of this film, the tone is. Instead of glorifying one side, it humanizes both. You see American commanders struggling with conflicting intelligence and Japanese officers wrestling with the weight of their decisions. It's respectful, balanced, and surprisingly daring for 1970 audiences, who weren't used to seeing the Japanese perspective treated with such nuance. Of course, some viewers found the deliberate pacing a drawback. The build-up takes its time, focusing on politics, strategy, and miscommunication rather than racing into action. But for history buffs, that's where the gold lies. Those quiet sequences give weight to the eventual strike, showing how many small decisions led to disaster. Tora, Tora, Tora isn't about non-stop action. It's about how and why the attack unfolded. For anyone who values accuracy, depth, and respect for history, this remains the definitive Pearl Harbor film. Even decades later, nothing else quite matches its precision. Soldier of Orange, 1977. Before Paul Verhoeven made RoboCop or Total Recall, he directed Soldier of Orange, a Dutch World War II drama that remains one of his finest achievements. Based on true events, it follows a group of university students whose lives are torn apart when the Nazis occupy the Netherlands. Some join the resistance, others collaborate, and friendships splinter under the crushing weight of war. The brilliance of this film lies in its scope. Instead of focusing on a single mission or battle, it traces how war transforms people. One friend becomes a hero, another a traitor, and others are simply crushed in the middle. Rutger Hauer, in one of his early roles, delivers a performance that's magnetic, showing both charm and torment as he navigates impossible choices. What makes Soldier of Orange different is its refusal to play by Hollywood rules. It's not flashy. It's not loaded with action sequences. It's about identity, betrayal, and survival under impossible pressure. Verhoeven directs with sharp precision, creating moments of tension that feel painfully real. The film was a massive success in the Netherlands and became Verhoeven's calling card for Hollywood. For those who only know him through his later sci-fi spectacles, Soldier of Orange will come as a revelation. It's powerful, intimate, and haunting, a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles are fought among friends. The Inglorious Bastards, 1978. Long before Quentin Tarantino borrowed the title, Enzo G. Castellari gave us the original Inglorious Bastards, a scrappy Italian war adventure that oozes pure grindhouse energy. Historically accurate? Not even close. But it never set out to be a textbook. Instead, it thrives on chaos. A group of American military prisoners bust out of custody in occupied France and, instead of laying low, stumble into a mission to intercept a German rocket. What follows is a wild ride of explosions, close calls, and non-stop attitude. Bo Svenson and Fred Williamson lead the charge, both bringing grit and swagger to their roles. This isn't about polished speeches or noble ideals. It's about survival, improvisation, and action. Castellari directs with speed and scrappiness, giving the movie a pulpy energy that never slows down. If The Dirty Dozen was slick and calculated, Inglorious Bastards is its scrappy younger cousin, rough around the edges, but brimming with raw energy. Critics at the time didn't exactly shower it with praise, but that was never the point. This was a movie built for late-night screenings, smoky theaters, and eventually VHS shelves where cult fans would pass it around like contraband treasure. For years, it lived in that underground space, appreciated mostly by those who loved their war films messy and unrefined. Then, Tarantino's 2009 film brought it back into the spotlight, with a sly cameo from Bo Svenson as a tip of the hat to the original. What makes Castellari's version so fun is its sheer scrappiness. The budget may have been thin, but the filmmakers made up for it with style, energy, and an unapologetic anything-goes spirit. It's loud, messy, and completely unashamed of what it is. For fans of grindhouse cinema, this isn't just worth watching. It's essential. Cross of Iron, 1977. Sam Peckinpah was never a filmmaker who played it safe, and Cross of Iron proves that in spades. It remains his only World War II film, and true to his reputation, it's raw, cynical, and completely unflinching. Instead of focusing on Allied heroes or grand victories, Peckinpah shifts the camera to a German platoon on the Eastern Front, where survival depends more on luck than loyalty. James Coburn commands the screen as Sergeant Steiner, a soldier respected by his men, but loathed by his superior, Captain Stransky, played with cold arrogance by Maximilian Schell. Stransky is obsessed with winning medals, not saving lives, and their conflict drives the story. What emerges is less about patriotism and more about the brutal reality of soldiers abandoned by ambition-driven leaders. Peckinpah brings all his signature touches: slow-motion combat, gritty realism, and sudden bursts of shocking violence. But unlike The Wild Bunch or Straw Dogs, there's no glamour here. The battlefield is mud, exhaustion, and moral collapse. Soldiers stumble forward, not for glory, but simply to avoid death for another day. That bleakness sets it apart from most war movies of its era. Critics were divided when it released. Some found it too bleak. Others praised its honesty. Yet Orson Welles reportedly called it the best war movie since All Quiet on the Western Front, which is about as high a compliment as any war film could hope for. Over the years, it has gained a reputation as one of Peckinpah's most underappreciated works. Cross of Iron refuses to romanticize anything. It humanizes soldiers without excusing them and paints war as a grinding, senseless machine that consumes everyone in its path. Brutal, haunting, and far ahead of its time, it's the anti-epic that still shocks today. A Bridge Too Far. 1977. How do you make one of the most ambitious war movies of the decade? Richard Attenborough answered with A Bridge Too Far, a sweeping epic about Operation Market Garden, the Allies' bold but ultimately doomed attempt to break into Germany through the Netherlands in 1944. With a runtime stretching well over 3 hours and a cast that reads like a cinematic hall of fame, this was Hollywood going all in on spectacle and scale. Sean Connery, Michael Caine, Anthony Hopkins, Robert Redford, and Gene Hackman are just a few of the names headlining, and Attenborough doesn't waste them. The movie covers the operation from every angle: generals drawing up strategies in command posts, paratroopers dropping into chaos behind enemy lines, and Dutch civilians caught in the crossfire. The sheer size of the production is staggering, with massive battle scenes staged using real troops and equipment rather than special effects. What really sets A Bridge Too Far apart is its honesty. Most war films of earlier decades leaned on triumph and patriotism. This one doesn't. It leans into miscommunication, overconfidence, and the crushing cost of failure. Bridges are missed, supply lines are delayed, and soldiers are left stranded. Instead of glorifying the plan, the film underlines just how fragile even the best-laid strategies can be. Critics at the time were divided. Some felt it got bogged down in too much detail, while others praised its commitment to historical accuracy. Over the years, though, its reputation has grown. Today, it's seen as one of the most thorough and respectful depictions of World War II ever put on film. Massive in scope, visually striking, and unafraid to admit when victory slipped through the Allies' fingers, A Bridge Too Far stands as one of the great war epics of the 1970s. Patton, 1970. If there's one World War II movie from the 70s that everyone should see, it's Patton. George C. Scott's portrayal of General George S. Patton is legendary, fierce, unapologetic, and impossible to ignore. The film opens with that now iconic monologue in front of a giant American flag, and from that moment, it never lets go. Scott commands the screen like he was born for the role, thundering his way through nearly 3 hours without ever losing the audience. What makes Scott's performance so unforgettable is his refusal to soften the man. He plays Patton as he was: brilliant, abrasive, and larger than life. Patton is shown as both a tactical genius and a deeply flawed leader, whose ego often got in the way of his victories. That honesty makes the film compelling. Francis Ford Coppola co-wrote the script, and you can feel his hand in the sharp, unflinching dialogue. This isn't propaganda. It's a portrait of a man too complex to fit into a single box. The battles themselves are staged with remarkable realism for their time. Tanks grind through the desert, soldiers push forward with weary determination, and every scene feels authentic, rather than staged. Yet the film never forgets that the real war is within Patton himself, his relentless ambition, his clashes with superiors, and his constant struggle with his own contradictions. Director Franklin J. Schaffner keeps the pacing surprisingly tight, making nearly 3 hours feel brisk. The Academy agreed. Patton swept 7 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. Scott famously refused to accept the award, calling the ceremony a meat parade, which only added to the film's mystique. Patton isn't just a war movie. It's a towering character study of one of the 20th century's most complicated figures, bold, uncompromising, and unforgettable. Out of all the World War II films of the 1970s, this one stands tallest. So there you have it, the 15 best World War II films of the 1970s. From gritty grindhouse chaos to sweeping epics, from Dutch resistance dramas to all-star Hollywood blockbusters, the decade gave us war stories that were anything but uniform. But here's the question: which of these films do you think deserves the crown? Drop your pick in the comments. Hit subscribe if you want more deep dives into hidden classics. And share this with a fellow movie fan. The conversation is just getting started.